evening, good morning, good night. I'm TC, and this is MBRR Podcast, or Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. I'm hoping that this last minute Monday afternoon, Monday evening stream will catch a few people's attention. Man, and yeah. It's an important conversation that I'm trying to have. So while I'm waiting for a few people to drop in, I want to go through the ancillary stuff that I always do. You know, all the self-shilling, self-promotion stuff, and that includes reminding everybody to subscribe to the channel, to check your bell icon, to make sure that you are getting notifications, and that you're staying subscribed, because a couple people tell me that they hit the bell icon and they don't get any notifications, so they have to go back and redo the bell icon. And then I've had a few people tell me that they've been unsubscribed and they had to come back in and subscribe again, and resubscribe, subscribe again. I don't know what's the best way to say it, but then down below you'll also see a join. Hey Jugs, thanks for tuning in. I think you're going to enjoy this brief little conversation tonight, Jugs, even if it's just you and I. But yeah, go down there below and find that channel membership, little join button, and hit that. I'm going to tell you guys that the channel memberships and the Subscribe Star memberships have been very good to me since I've launched them both, and they've been very helpful, life-saving in some respects. So if you enjoy the content, you like what you see, like what you hear, even if it gets on your nerves a little bit sometimes, because I know I get a little preachy, and I don't care. I don't mind being preachy. Sometimes we need that, right? I think that's it's important for us to understand that we need that sometimes. And sometimes when I'm preaching to you guys, I'm preaching to myself maybe more than I'm preaching to you. So yeah, so join, become a member. Jugs is a member. As a matter of fact, I have to do. I can't do it right now. I don't know how it's gonna. I don't know. I wanted to do something, but can't figure out how to do it right now. So I'll have to go in and adjust that later. I was going to do something for you there, Jugs. But anyway, the topic: tyrant cops and overreaching government. Right? It's our fault, and it is. It really is. So I have a coworker who's over here doing inappropriate things to me as he drives by, and I feel violated right now. It's terrible. I feel terribly violated when things like that happen. But he's a good kid. He's gonna go somewhere with his life, I think, if he just stop partying all the time. But yeah, tyrant cops and overreaching, out of control government, and it's our fault. Yes, take care of my illegal chickens. Exactly. If you join my channel membership options, you can help me take care of my illegal backyard chickens. And for those of you who have never watched before, it's become an ongoing joke of sorts. It's true that I have unapproved backyard chickens that the city wants me to get their permission to have, even though I already have them. But first I have to get permission from my neighbors, which is part of that overreaching government and how it is our fault. It's your fault. If you have a problem with tyrant cops in your community, in your neighborhood, if you have a problem with tyrant cops in your city, in your county, in your state patrol people, if you've got a problem with them, that's you allowed that to happen. You've allowed that to continue. If you've got a problem with an overreaching, tyrannical government, you know, and so many of you know I prefer to say the state, because we're supposed to be the government, but we're lazy, so we like to call everybody else the government. If you have an overreaching, bearing, extremely all too powerful local government, your city state or your county state or your state or whatever, that's on you. You don't have anybody to blame for that but yourself, frankly. And it's the same thing with me. It's just patently true. And here's what I mean. And as some of you guys are aware of the story of Nathan and Samantha from down in Bellevue, Nebraska. And boy, I'm going to step on some toes here. Not Nathan and Samantha's, but some of you are aware of what happened to Samantha here a couple months ago in her own driveway when a Tyrant cop arrested her for stepping onto the pavement of her own driveway to escort her autistic teenage son into the house when he happened to be coming home from being with friends or whatever, in the middle of a traffic stop that was taking place on Samantha and Nate's private property. Now, it turns out that there was a legitimate reason for the stop, and the driver of the vehicle, if I remember the details correctly, the driver of the vehicle did have an outstanding warrant. It was for something, trivial. It wasn't like she was wanted for, murder or something like that. But she did have an outstanding warrant. And so, whether we like it or not, the officer had a probable cause to arrest the individual driving the vehicle. But he was a tyrant. And he arrested Samantha for obstruction and like failure to follow a lawful order or some garbage like that. And in the process of all of that, he also labeled Nate a soft sit. And everybody was outraged, and rightly so. It was an outrageous situation. It should literally piss off any person who is reasonable and logical and has any sense of empathy and humanity. What they did to Samantha by arresting her on her private property when she wasn't even approaching or encroaching on or closing the distance with the officer. She was going out of her way to walk as far around the officer as possible. He was just mad that people on their own private property dared to resist his authority, dared to respect him or dared to not respect him as an officer. And before they even started filming, this Bellevue, Nebraska cop ordered them back into their own house. And they're like, no, we're not, you can't tell me to go into my own house for this. And so that's where it really started, is that he was mad at them. But where the problem comes in, the reason why I say these things are our fault is because stories like Nate and Sam's story get a lot of attention on the front end, right? As soon as they happen, we get all these channels that talk to them, and they tell these stories, and they highlight these folks, and they get thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of views on their channels as they talk about Nate and Samantha and what happened to them, because it fits a narrative where they can point out and say, look at how dirty the cops are. Look at how bad these tyrant cops are. Look at how bad government is. Look at how you cannot trust cops. You can't trust the government. And by and large, that's true. You just can't. If you go and you watch the video that I put up last night of another Minnesota State Patrol officer in the exact same geographic location as where Olivia Flores was murdered by Minnesota State Patrol Trooper Shane Roper back on May 18th, this state patrol officer on Friday afternoon, as I was heading home from work, was tooling on down the highway, not obeying the speed limit, and when he had a chance to get around traffic, no lights, no sirens, no nothing, not running code, just traveling down the road, decided it was okay for him to do 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 miles an hour faster than the posted speed limit. Now, in the grand scheme of things, on a freeway, on a highway, a 4-lane highway with a median divider, what's 70 in a 60? What is 75 in a 60? That's enough to get you and I pulled over. That's what it is. It's enough to kill somebody in a traffic accident is what it is. But he's just tooling along, doing his own thing. But back to, and so we lose focus, right? So we go back and we look at the story of Nate and Sam and all these channels telling the story of Nathan and Samantha. But nobody's paying attention to them now. I mean, I am, and I'm not saying that, look at how wonderful I am. I'm the superb person. I have time to pay attention to Nate and Samantha. I'm not texting them or messaging them daily. I'm not on the phone with them daily. But I'm tracking with them. I'm checking in with them. I'm finding out how things are going. Other stories do, arise, and I cover those stories. But I'm looking in on Nate, and I'm watching. They've got an ally down there in Bellevue. This individual is a stand-up guy. He's calling the prosecuting attorney on a regular basis, wanting to know when they're going to drop, literally asking the prosecutor, when are you going to drop these charges? This is ridiculous. When are you going to, end this travesty of justice? But the problem is we like the sensationalism. And when a story is fresh, when a story is new, it's easy to be outraged. It's easy to focus on it, to be hyper aware of it. And then when another story comes along and takes our focus off of that story we were just paying attention to, we kind of forget about the Nathans and the Samanthas. In this case, honestly, we forget about the Samanthas because she's the one that's facing jail time. Here's this teacher in the public school system there, minding her own business, really, other than watching out for her, which is her own business, watching out for her autistic child and her daughter, who was one of the people in the car that was being pulled over. But here's Samantha, literally minding her own business. She's on private property. She's resisting the tyrannical attitude of the bully cop, and now she's looking at jail time. And I'm afraid that everybody's forgotten about them. And I wonder why. Why does that happen? It reminds me of some of the interactions that I've been having as I try to keep the memory of what happened to Olivia Flores in Rochester alive in my area. This is on you guys. Don't get me wrong. But I'm trying to keep the memory of what was done to Olivia at the hands of government, at the hands of the state, like quite literally in this case, state trooper. I'm trying to keep that alive in some of the different social media groups that are dedicated to local events. And I've got people that are like, old news, bro. Let it go, bro. And I'm just absolutely flummoxed at the number of people who were fired up about this, waiting to find out, the full story, waiting to find out if he would be charged, who have just kind of they appear to have just let it slide. And that's why Tyrant cops can continue. That's why overreaching government can continue, because a lot of times what happens is, well, it doesn't impact me. Like, it wasn't my family member that was killed. It wasn't my family member that was wrongfully arrested. It wasn't, whatever the story might be. It wasn't, me who got a retaliatory ticket because I flipped a cop off. So we kind of get to the point where we just go on to the next sensational story. And I think we should be ashamed of ourselves for that. I mean, call it judgmental. I mean, I've been called worse. Call me a jerk, if you will, if you feel it necessary, because I'm saying what I'm saying about people being responsible for the tyrants in their own community. But if you're responsible for the tyrants in your own community, how can I be saying we got to hold you accountable for what's happening to somebody like Samantha? And the reason I say it is that I think it's easier sometimes to give a damn about what's happening to that person over there, because there's no vested interest in it for you. You're not at risk. I'm not at risk. Like, I could sit here and I can tell Samantha and Nate, I said, yeah, fight this. You got to fight. I'm not the one that has to pick up the pieces. I'm not the one that has to foot the legal bill. I'm not the one that has to worry about what happens if my significant other ends up locked up for resisting an abusive tyrant like the cop there in Bellevue, Nebraska. So it's really easy to get hyped up about that. It's a whole different story to show up to a city council meeting and speak out, or to a county commission meeting or a school board meeting and speak out against something and have your freedom threatened if you don't toe the line when a school board or a city council or a county commission puts violations in place as policy for how you can speak or what you can speak about. There's a guy down in Aransas Pass, Texas. I don't know if some of you are familiar with him, but his name is Jason Falwell. And he's been arrested and charged, and I believe one of his attorneys has been arrested and charged as well for disrupting a city council meeting when he cursed at a city council meeting. Now, for some people, cursing in a city council meeting seems disruptive. It seems like disorderly conduct. But over and over and over again, we're told that unpopular speech is protected speech, and that no government entity has the authority to censor that, to restrict that, especially if you're approaching that government entity for a redress of grievances. But he's going to... You are describing how your neighbors will feel when you get busted for your chicken. Yeah, I mean, that's probably somewhat true and somewhat hilarious at the same time, Jugs. The neighbors have no problem with me having chickens, but when I get busted for it, they're going to be like, no skin off my nose, they're not my chickens. So, except then they won't get the free eggs, because I do give my neighbors free eggs from time to time. I like to give back to my community. So, I say all of that to say that, like, if you have a problem with tyrant cops, if you have a problem with the philosophy of tyranny that is rearing its ugly head here in the United States, and we could talk all day about how much worse it used to be, because Is that bribery? No, I'm just taking care of my neighbors, sir. But we could talk all day about how bad it used to be. Back in the good old days when law enforcement was just a good old boys club. But back in the day, most communities were policed by people who knew the people in the community. There's been a movement afoot for the last 20 some years to revive what they are calling community oriented policing, where you have officers assigned to the same neighborhoods all the time, so they get to know the people there. They know the ins and outs of the community. They know who lives where. They develop rapport and relationships with homeowners and property owners and business owners and neighborhood kids, and I think that's a good model. I think it's a great model, actually. But back in the day, that was just the way it was. Your town constable, your town police officer, your town cop, he lived in your town. He was from your town. He was like born and raised there. And so he had a vested interest in treating people in town like they mattered, like they meant something to the community. What we see happening today, even with the community-oriented policing model, is that these cops aren't from that town. So where I live in Minnesota, I think 2 of the county deputies that are assigned to be the law enforcement presence in the town on a regular basis, I think 2 of them are from our town, and then the others are from other parts of the county. And so, like a couple months ago, I was out for dinner at one of our local tap houses. And I live in a town of 2,700 people, roughly. It's the largest city in our county, but it's not large by any stretch of the imagination. I live in a small town. And we had an individual, a business owner, that was in the tap house. It's called Stellar 181 Tap House in Spring Valley, Minnesota. And I was sitting in there, and I looked over, and I saw that the bar owner, the tavern owner, was dealing with this local business owner who appeared to be having some sort of medical situation. And my gut instinct in those situations, especially with the training that I've had throughout my life, from my time in the military to the day, was to go in there and intervene and help in whatever way that I could. And I started telling people, like, hey, here's what we need to do. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Someone call 911. So someone did call 911, and a county deputy showed up. I didn't know this guy from it. Sorry, I lost connection there for a second. So yeah, everybody looks like they're 16 to TC these days, because I'm getting to be an old man. And I didn't know this guy. I didn't know him from Adam. And like that, it didn't have any impact. It wasn't like this was a situation where there was a violent crime taking place, or there was a dispute between neighbors. But it just drove home to me just how much we don't know the members of the career field of law enforcement in our own areas. And sometimes that's a good thing, because I've seen the way a lot of cops are in a lot of places, and the less you know them, the better. But I also think there's something to be said for getting to know them, to personalize the interaction, to humanize those interactions, and to be, because when you look at them and you go, look, I'm going to hold you accountable for how you're acting right now, that has some punch. That has some kick to it. It's kind of like if you got kids and your kids are acting up in the front yard, and you look at them and you're like, this is it. I'm going to tell you one last time. Don't be throwing rocks at my windows or at our windows. Don't be throwing rocks at the house. Don't be doing that. Don't be throwing that stuff around. Don't be, throwing the baseball towards the neighbor's house, because you might knock out his window. And if I have to tell you again, you're coming inside, you're going to be grounded. I'm taking away everything, and you're going to sit in your room in the dark. No cell phone, no video game, no Switch, no nothing. That's a bunch, because the kids know you and they're acting up, and they're like, oh crap, dad, or mom, or whatever the case might be, it's serious. They're like, they're really going to hold me accountable on this. And then you follow up, because they do exactly the thing you tell them not to do, and you're like, I warned you. I told you that this was what was going to happen if you didn't listen to me. So here you go. Here's your accountability. But if some random kid who doesn't live in your neighborhood, who isn't, part of your family, isn't one of your neighbor's kids, comes by and they're throwing rocks at houses and whatnot, the best you can do is yell at them and hope that they run away. I'm going to hold you accountable. Like, dude, you don't even know who I am. You don't know where I live. You don't know who my parents are. How in the world are you going to hold me accountable? Hi, Teresa. Thanks for stopping in. If anybody else is watching, say hi. I'd like to know who's watching. That's why I do Drive Time Dialectics. And I do Monday Night Musings, but I'm not doing Monday Night Musings tonight, by the way. I'm taking this Monday off, getting prepared for a couple of things this week. And so, yeah. But, so, like, the kid who's, like, not from your neighborhood, it's not your own kid, is acting up, and you try to hold them accountable. You don't have any way to do that. And that's why I think getting to know your local cops is, it's not going to protect you all the time, as we know is the case with Carolina and Fort Worth. We know for a fact that didn't protect her, because when Kruger decided to take her and faceplant her for the high crime and treason of asking him questions, she said his name. Hey, Kruger, how are you? And bam, on her face she went. I mean, like 18 seconds from first contact with him to being literally given what I at the time assumed was a traumatic brain injury from the agonal breathing that I heard coming from her in the video. So, like, we have got to start holding ourselves accountable. We are accountable. Yeah, Carolina and Fort Worth. There's a video in my lives about her, Teresa. You should scroll down through my live playlist and watch that video. But we have to hold ourselves accountable for holding these people accountable. Like, if you don't like what's happening with your local cops, you don't have anybody to blame but yourself for that. And part of holding them accountable is when you see them being decent human beings, show them appreciation for that. Not, it's like if your kids are a perfect example if you've got kids. We're so quick to look at our children when they're doing something wrong and say to them, that's naughty, or that's not appropriate, or that's bad behavior, don't do that anymore. But when your kids are doing something that's kind, it's gracious, and it shows that they're developing empathy, yeah, that's who I'm talking about, Teresa. When your kids are showing empathy and they're showing decency to someone else, especially when it's unprompted, and instead of having to tell the kid, go up there and open the door for that poor old lady as she's trying to get out of the store with her groceries, or offering to carry the groceries for her. Instead of prompting them, when they do it on their own, you tell them, hey, kiddo, that was really good of you to do that. Thank you. It was so kind. And to some degree, we got to treat cops like that. Just like literally, honestly, to some degree, you have to infantilize cops. You have to treat them like you're your children. When you do see them doing something that's decent, when you do see them doing something that's kind, when you do see them doing something where they're demonstrating that they have a human side and that they have empathy, tell them thank you for doing that. And I have videos on my channel. I'm going to be putting one up here pretty soon from several weeks ago, where I was prepared to be mad at the cop, and he redeemed himself. And I'm gonna, put it up with an explanation of why I was prepared to be mad. And when I get a chance to see him again, I'll tell him thank you for doing the right thing. But as long as we want to hold cops and our local government officials accountable for their actions, we have to be holding ourselves accountable for how we act and how we treat people. And if we're not willing to step up to the plate on a regular basis and show up to city council meetings and show up to school board meetings and show up to county board meetings, and we're not willing to call out the good behavior when we see it and thank people for the good behavior when we see it, as stupid as it and counterintuitive as it may seem, sometimes we have to. Because it's really easy, it's terribly easy to just be mad and bent out of shape all the time at everything that the government does and everything that cops are doing. And like, are road pirates? Yeah, you're damn right they are. But every once in a while, you'll see one sitting outside in the rain changing the tire for a family. And they don't have to do that. Every once in a while, you'll see, like I saw, one who gets a call from to go do a check on somebody, and they buy baby formula for a mother who doesn't have the money to buy baby formula. I mean, like, that's legitimately, they don't have to do that. And so, if we're going to be mad at them for going above and doing tyrannical things that they don't have a right to do, we should also be willing to call out the good behavior when they do something they're not obligated to do, like buy formula for a single mom who's struggling to pay her bills, or buys a meal for a homeless person who maybe is an addict, and they sit down and they have that, and they give that meal, and they just have a conversation with that person. Like, that kind of holding them accountable is important too. And I think, honestly, it's going to sound crazy, maybe it's going to sound counterintuitive, but then when you do call out somebody for bad behavior, that has even more impact. Because they see that you're willing to say the positive things that need to be said, even if it's stupid that we have to say thank you for doing good things. I want you to imagine that you're at work and your boss is on your ass all the time. No matter what you do, it's never good enough, never the right thing. And after a while, you're like, is nothing I do good enough for you? Ever. Is anything I do good enough for you, boss? You pay me. I come in, I show up, I'm never late, I never call in, I never take time off, I'm always here, I'm always ready to do the job that you paid me and hired me to do, constantly. I'm here constantly, and the boss just rides you over and over and over. And maybe even when you do make a mistake, you deserve to get your ass chewed. But you just get to the point where everything that you do gets so critiqued that you're just like, I'm done. I don't give a crap anymore. I'm done. And I think that's how we treat strangers, because they put on a uniform. And I think that's how we treat strangers because they're government officials or they're government public employees. And now I'm not saying I'm going to go soft on government employees, on public servants, on the protect and serve community. I'm not. I'm still really pissed about a lot of stuff that's happening. But I got to thinking about it. We really do need to hold ourselves accountable for how we treat people. And we need to hold ourselves accountable for forgetting about people like the Nates and the Samanthas and the others out there as their story fades from memory, and we're looking for the next big, endorphin rush of being right about dirty tyrant cops and pigs and road pirates. And I think we get so focused on that sometimes that we fail to remind ourselves that no matter how mad we can be at these people, every once in a while we're going to run across one that's worthy of a attaboy. Are we so angry about the tyranny that takes place in law enforcement that we've forgotten that not every single one of them is a terrible person? And that's hard for me, because I know that I've alienated people that were friends who I probably could have convinced to listen to me better had I not just gone around throwing flaming spears and shooting fiery arrows of condemnation. And I want to try and have a positive impact on this movement in such a way that when I am holding tyrant cops and out of control public elected and appointed servants accountable for their bad action, for their disappointing and tyrannical behavior, I wanted to have more of a punch than just for them to be able to go, oh, there's that cop hater, there's that government hater. Because I don't like the state. I despise the state. I am an anti-statist. But maybe, just maybe, we could make more headway with the Back the Blue crowd especially, if we could find a way to point out the bad while praising the good at the same time. I don't know if that makes any sense. Tyrant cops are easy to find, and tyrant public servants are easy to find. And with our discerning eyes, we should be looking for them. But while we're looking for them and calling them out for their bad behavior, let's applaud the ones that are doing the right thing when we find them, if we find them. And let's not forget the people that are suffering just because their story's not sexy anymore. Be the solution. Not the problem. I love you guys. Appreciate everything that you guys do for me, and I would love to, have you stick around. It's a little bit different video than or live stream than I do normally, so I hope that you guys find it compelling. And no, I agree, George. Too few good versus bad ones. Absolutely, 100% agree. 100% agree. 95% of them are bad and 5% of them are good. But man, when I find that 5%, I really want to let them know thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing. So I hope that even though this isn't my normal fare when it comes to my solo streams, I hope that you found it compelling and that you will be moved to think about what I said. So until next time, my friends, thank you for watching, and fight for your freedom, and is yours. Fight for your liberty. It belongs to you. Sic Semper, Tyrant.